Hello, Tungsten Miner here. Today I'm going to continue the series I've been doing on Railcraft explorations. Let's jump in. Okay, next I wanted to explore the electric track. There's a fair bit of stuff to do with it, and I was kind of curious how it worked. So we can see here I've got an electric engine, which is pretty much the same thing as the steam engine, except with a slightly smaller set of controls. So you can't be idle. There's no such thing. You're either running or not. You don't have water and coal and inventories and all that sort of stuff. You've just got power. You still have a place to put a ticket if you want to route things. You still have your different throttle settings and reverse. And all of them have this little lock, which means people can't mess with your engine once you put it down and locked it. So apart from that, it pretty much does the same things that engines do or steam engines do. You can connect it to other carts. You can have it pull them around. You can start and stop. The way you get power, though, a little bit different, of course. So in this rig, I generally play my mods with mod packs with RF power. So I've got myself a little dynamo here that's pumping power into this energy cell. The energy cell is then pumping it into this guy, which is one of these, a flux transformer. So you make these guys, and it at 80% efficiency, whatever that means, is going to convert your RF power into Railcraft charge. So you just take 8 of them, stack them on top of each other, and it forms a multi-block. You plug power into any of its faces. You can draw power out of any of its faces. And then to get the power into the lines, you need one of these shunting cables and this wire shunting rig here. So this is the shunting cable itself. Paper, lead, large spool. And then the wire support frame is this guy here. Oh, bother. There you go. So rebar and plates of various kinds gets you more or less of those things. So that's what you need, and you need both of them. I tried it out with just the wire by itself being around or near, or, somehow adjacent to the track, and it didn't work. I had to plug into one of these boxes, and one of those boxes had to be under the rail. I only made it a little hill here to make it easy to see what's going on. And you can kind of see that the wire is kind of bent upwards, so it's in contact with this surface up here, kind of indicating that it recognizes there's a track up there. Okay, so that's kind of all there is to say for electric engines. You just got to power your track. Now, the track can be a little bit lossy if you're running through a long length of these cables, so you do want to minimize those. Next up, I took a look at this force track here. So this is just a creative mode source of power, powering this force track block. And the way this thing works is you can see it's got a bunch of different sides to it. You can see this one's a bit smaller and that one's a bit bigger. So there'll be one side which is just ever so slightly larger than the others. That's the one you want facing towards wherever your track is going to be. So if you had a piece of track on top of your force track block, it's going to be looking for a piece of track that's on top of something at the same level and in a straight line. If it finds it, and it's powered, and it has a redstone signal, then it will generate these force tracks going across the breach. Of course, if I turn that off, it goes away. And trains, carts, anything that normally runs on rails will run on these rails just as easily. Plus, it's got a cool effect. Next up, I wanted to play around with elevator tracks. These don't work very well with coupled tracks or carts or engines or anything. So here I've just got a very simple cart going around with vanilla booster tracks. Well, not quite vanilla. They would be vanilla, except I'm using reinforced rails. Booster tracks in any case, so that's why all the levers is to provide the redstone current to give the little boost. And then as the cart goes around, it pops off of this track and into this cradle here. Since the cradle is powered, and it has to be powered from the top, it then boosts itself up until it runs out of track or it runs out of power. So I could have just powered it from this level, and if I had a track adjacent, then it would pop off and go off in that direction. So you can charge these to different heights and have different floors, basically, depending upon where you want to get to. Once it gets to the top, I've got another booster rail sending it over this way. Then I've got some unpowered elevator track that makes it so that it can descend that course and then just pops back onto here and goes around again. So elevator track, I didn't demonstrate the multi-floor thing, but hopefully you can see an example on the wiki. Railcraft has a pretty good wiki with a nice video about that. The next experiment I tried was playing around with various kinds of relaying and changing things tracks. So we can see here I've got an engine that's going around a small track, and it's carrying a bunch of these carts, these yellow carts with flashing lights on the top. All of them are one kind or another of different relaying carts. So let's take a look at this first one here. So this is an undercutter cart, and what it does is it cuts out the ground directly underneath and off to the sides of your track. And it's going to replace it with whatever block is in here. And this is just a ghost block, but here's the inventory block. You can also tell it to restrict itself to only cutting out certain kinds of things. Here I've left these empty, so it's cutting out whatever it happens to find. This thing can take its supplies and drop off its leavings into an adjacent chest cart. So I've got this guy here, which has the dirt that it originally dug up from the ground as it was doing the initial pass, and then it's picking up red wool and dropping off white wool as it goes along. Next, I've got another undercutter cart that just replaces it with white wool, so it works the same way and it uses the same system. I just wanted to have clear like how this changes, and if it just changed it all from grass to red wool, then this would just all be red wool and you wouldn't see anything. So this is to demonstrate kind of exactly how it works and what it touches as it goes along. This guy is a track relayer cart. Same general principle. It's changing the stuff underneath the train as it goes past. Except in this case, it's changing the track rather than the the bed underneath the track. And in this case, I'm picking up any strap iron track and replacing it with reinforced track. I've got my stock over here, and of course, it also can use an adjacent chest cart for inventory. And then finally, I've got the same thing going in the other direction so that we can actually see the change. So as we go along, we can see as this cart passes over a block, it replaces the 3 blocks adjacent with red wool. And then as this next one comes along, it replaces those same adjacent blocks with white wool. And as this one comes along, it replaces the strap iron with reinforced track. And then finally, as this one comes along, it replaces the reinforced track with strap iron again. There are a couple of other carts that are similar. Let's take a look. So we've got the track layer cart, which basically does only half of the relaying operation. It just puts track down. The tricky bit is that you can't put a locomotive in front of this, or the locomotive, by definition, is not running on any tracks. So you wind up using a furnace cart, which is a vanilla object that works kind of like a locomotive, except it can be in the middle of the train. It can push instead of just pull. The other way that you can handle this is to have a locomotive in reverse. And so you're basically reversing down the track, pushing the cart in front of you, so that you can lay things as you want, kind of behind the train, except in front of the train. The other one I didn't demonstrate is a track remover cart, which does exactly what you think it does. It can just pull up the tracks as the train passes. And we've already looked at the undercart, and we've already looked at the track relayer cart. So speaking of the furnace cart, I got curious just to see how it works. The basic notion is really simple. It doesn't even have a UI. You can click on it all you want, it doesn't do anything. But if you click on it with some fuel in hand, off it goes. And that's pretty much it. It's going to burn through all that fuel that I just stuffed in there and zip around these corners. It is a good deal faster than a locomotive on its slow setting, although it's roughly the same as a locomotive on its fastest setting. As you can see, it is able to be in the middle of a train and still provide motive power, which is one of its kind of nice advantages. Disadvantages, though, it's really, really basic, right? You can't change speeds. You can't control its speed with various settings on the track. You can't route it except in the most crude fashion of just detecting that it's a furnace cart. So there's a lot of things you really can't use it for, but it is useful on occasion. Next, I wanted to explore how cart dispensers work. So I set up this little system that automatically dispenses and collects a single cart at a time. There's a little bit of stuff going on here, so let's talk it through here. It begins with this cart dispenser. So this is a block which has a very small inventory that you can toss in little carts. And as you can see, so long as it's got a cart in the front slot, it really doesn't get to these back slots. So these are just for backup. In other words, it doesn't round robin through different kinds of carts. It just sends the one. So if I only had the one cart in here, so I'll steal that one. Now it's sending out a tank cart. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to steal that. So I've got one of each now. And it's still probably just going to bounce back and forth between these two. It might get to the third if I increase the speed a bit. Yeah, not quite. So let me jump forward to this guy. So this is a timer from ProjectRed. And what it does is, as this thing spins around, every so many seconds, it gives you an impulse and sends a redstone signal in front of it. So that little guy indicates the front. So what I'm doing here is just every so often, it's going to pulse a redstone signal to this cart dispenser, which triggers it to release the first cart in its inventory. And as we can see, off they go. Directly in front of this guy is a control track. And what this does is it imparts just a nudge, not a powerful boost like a boost track, just a nudge in a certain direction. So it's great for getting the cart moving because this thing does not impart any momentum to the carts that it puts down. They just sit there if you don't have something going. So you almost always want either a boost track or a control track directly in front of a cart dispenser. And since the boost is kind of small, I've got them at pretty routine intervals all the way around. I'll get back to that in just a minute. So here they come all the way around. I'm going to skip right past that. And then eventually they come around here, and this is a cart detector that detects any cart at all, which then emits a redstone signal, which then triggers a redstone signal into this second cart detector, or a cart dispenser. A cart dispenser with a cart standing in front of it, which receives a redstone signal, collects the cart. So if there is no cart in front, it dispenses a cart. If there is a cart in front, then it collects a cart. So the cart arriving here triggers this guy, which sends a redstone signal to this guy. It notices, hey, there's a cart in front of me, and so it picks up the cart. I've then used some thermal expansion item ducts to move the cart around into the other cart dispensers, so we wind up in a loop. Now, it is possible to do this using item unloaders and loaders and a little train running back and forth, but that makes for a much bigger setup. So this is just for demonstration purposes. It brings us then back to the original cart dispenser, and that sends it around. So here I've got things set up so that it's able to dispense my 3 different kinds of carts, because each one winds up in the inventory first. Now, one last thing about this setup. It occurred to me that this might make a really, really nice way to have a very simple passenger transport system. So let's say I'm standing on a platform near somewhere interesting or important, and I want to just hop on the line and see where it takes me. Well, I can stand here, and that embarkation track stuck me in the cart as it went by because that pressure plate put a redstone signal on that guy, which picked me up. This then is a disembarkation track, and I've got some redstone power supplying it, and so it's going to bump me off in the direction of this red arrow here. So standing right where I am. So if I wanted to take another trip, I'm going to go over here. And now this cart can't pick me up because it's already full. And the next cart, likewise. But the one after that is empty. And so zip, off I go around the track and disembark. So pretty crude system. You're not going to be issuing tickets and going to specific destinations and all that kind of thing. But you can set yourself up with something where you've got a cart that gets dispensed every so often. It runs a big loop, and folks can go from station to station to station and get picked up by a cart and move to the next station and then wait for another cart to come along. If you want to do something sophisticated, this isn't it. But it's probably a really easy place to get started with making some kind of passenger transport. Okay, last subject for this video. This is a train dispenser setup. Obviously way more complicated than dispensing individual carts. But we'll break it down piece by piece. It's really, well, it is that complicated. Anyway, we'll walk through it. Okay, so I've got a button, imparts a redstone signal to this train dispenser. It looks just like a cart dispenser, but it isn't one. And in here, we've got a slightly different interface. Up here, we're describing the pattern of the train. So which cars in what orders. I have made my decision to start with a steam locomotive and then have a regular mine cart followed by a hopper cart. Down here is the inventory. So these are just ghost images. These are the real items. So you've got to actually have the carts available for the train dispenser to dispense. And if I recall correctly, it just skips a cart, I think. I'm not sure about that one, if it doesn't have enough inventory. Once the train comes out, this is a booster track, so it's just going to push it along. This is a coupling track. So if two carts are over this track close enough together where it can find them and join them, it will join them. So this is the same thing as shift right clicking with a crowbar, except it does it automatically. And this isn't in the auto couple mode, so it automatically links them together as they come along. Another little booster, another little booster. The first thing to come through is going to be the locomotive. It doesn't have any water and it doesn't have any fuel, and it's turned off. So the first step in that is I'm adjusting its throttle setting to the lowest setting because I don't want it to zoom out of the station. That's all this does. It doesn't actually turn it on even. It's still in the shutdown mode, but I've changed the throttle setting because it comes out clicked up a couple of notches on the throttle. Another boost to keep things moving. This is a holding track underneath an item loader. In the item loader, we have blocks of coal. So I'm going to give my trains 4 blocks of coal when they first pass under, because I'm going to move until destination, the train, has this much stuff in it. And I'm going to hold the train until I've gotten all 4 of them in there. Now, it moves 4 things really fast. You can barely even see it stop. So this now has gotten fuel into the train, and this holding, so this isn't a lockdown, this is a holding setting on this lock track, is going to give it a boost in the direction it was facing when it stopped. In other words, it's going to keep pushing it this way. Another little boost, another holding track under water tank. Works pretty much the same way because steam engines need water. This is just a portable tank from ThermalExpansion set into its creative mode, the purple ring, which means it's got infinite water, making this example a little bit simpler. Likewise, boost track pushes it along. This is the one that turns on the engine. So this moves from shutdown to running, but it just got its fuel and it just got its water, and you click it to running and it still doesn't have any steam built up or heat. So it's not really going to start moving yet. So one more boost track to get it kind of out of the way and settled over here before it waits and builds up steam and gets ready to move. Then it moves along the track, it comes over here, and finally we've got pretty much exactly the same setup we had over on the other side, with one small exception. So this is a cart dispenser. The train dispenser does not pick anything up, so you want to use a cart dispenser to pick up the bits of your train. This is just any cart detector. And then I ran into the problem where when a train with many carts came along, the one cart got picked up first, then the second cart made it because it was hanging out and got boosted in. But the next cart got boosted in so fast that it didn't get picked up and it didn't trigger another tick of the redstone signal. The redstone signal simply stayed on the whole time. And so this cart dispenser never got the message that it had to pick up a second cart. And then the whole system got gummed up and just stopped working. So I pulled in a little bit of red power here to make the difference. This is an AND gate. It has 3 sides, here, here, and here, all of which must have a redstone signal in order for the output side, the guy with the tall post, to emit a redstone signal. Now, what I've got here is a lever on this side, so that's always a high, turned on redstone signal. Over here, I've got a timer that is set to every 2 seconds, and I could probably even make that a little faster. That is then going to give this second side a redstone signal, which means the only thing that we're waiting on for this whole gate to activate is to get a redstone signal from this cart detector. So this is going to force the signal off and only tick it once per second, even when there's a whole pile up of carts standing over here. And this is going to not allow this thing to start dispensing carts, because I don't want it to dispense carts, I want it to pick them up. But if I give it a redstone signal when there's nothing in front, it will dispense any carts it has. So between these two things, this means you can't get a redstone signal unless there's a cart standing there. And this means you can't just ignore the fact that a cart was piled up behind and the redstone signal didn't actually go off. Okay, we talked through the whole thing except one last bit. Here, this is a vacuumulator from ThermalExpansion, and it works as kind of a superpowered hopper. It will suck in loose items on the ground from many meters away. All gone. And then I've got a tube underneath here, which goes up and around into this item loader. So any coal coke that is dropped by your engine when it gets dismantled is going to get dropped on the ground. The vacuumulator is going to slurp it up, and then it's going to send it around to this item loader so that it can be loaded into the next train. Now, of course, I could have set things up where I unloaded the train first and had it come along completely unloaded, but that would have doubled the size of this thing. So you can imagine doing pretty much all of these steps in reverse order in order to unload and decouple and shut down all of your locomotives and things before they arrive at the dismantling station. Okay, so let's see this thing in action. Click the button, redstone signal. It follows the pattern, emitting all the trains. All the trains got coupled. Locomotive got set to its lowest setting. There it is. It got loaded up with coal coke. It got loaded up with water. Now the boosters are going to give it just a nudge out of the station here. And it's just going to sit on the tracks because it's barely coming up to temperature and it's got no steam built up at all. So this thing's just going to sit here until it finally manages to build up enough steam to start traveling. At which point, you've got a fully functional locomotive that can go off pretty much anywhere you want. Now, I've only built this tiny little loop because I don't need it to go anyplace. But you can well imagine now you've got a train that's ready to go anywhere you like. So we hang on for a few more seconds and it will get started down the track. Here it comes. So these boosters are to make sure that once the locomotive is gone, any following carts get pushed into the cart dispenser. And that's it. Carts now get moved along back into the original cart dispenser. The coal coke has been picked up by the vacuumulator and is now on its way through the pneumatic system to get back to the item loader. So it looks complicated. It kind of is complicated, but it's really just one piece at a time, and you get yourself a fully functional train at the push of a button. All right, I think that is it for this video, and I think also for this series. I'm pretty sure I've covered most of the stuff in Railcraft. There's a few blocks I didn't touch on, but I think I got most of the major systems. So if there is something I missed, let me know in the comments, and I will perhaps put up another video to cover that. And I may well, now that I know a bit more, go ahead and make a mod spotlight for Railcraft. It's a big mod, and it's complicated, and I was intimidated by it for a long time. Took me a while to decide to finally get into it. But it's pretty amazing what you can do. There's a ton of stuff here that's all really, really neat. So I hope this has tempered your fear of Railcraft. It certainly did for me. That's it for now. Talk to you later.